how are we doing emotionally? How are we responding to the stresses that we have? What am I thinking? What is my mindset right now about what's going on?
Hi, welcome to the Tarun Stevenson Leadership Channel. I'm your host, Tarun Stevenson, and we are all about helping you lead, communicate, and grow to your full potential. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite podcasting app, don't forget to subscribe and follow so that you can stay up to date with all our latest episodes. All right, here's the latest episode. Let's get into it. Well, hey everybody, Tarun here, and I'm here with my good friend Cami D'Almeida from Vigio Leadership Development. Welcome, Cami. Good to talk to you.
Hey, Tarun. Thank you for having me on your program. It's great to be here.
I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. I really enjoy our catch-ups and our conversations, and I thought, after our last catch-up, we needed to make our conversations something that other people could be a part of. So I'm really excited about chatting with you. Just as a brief introduction, Cami is a leadership development coach, but he has a long history in leadership in both the not-for-profit space and also in corporate and government spaces as well. Most notably, he's worked as the lead pastor of Connect Church in Townsville, and before that, he was the lead pastor of Bethany Network in Sri Lanka and also part of the national executive. So, Cami, just give us a little bit of background about your journey as a leader and how you came to be in the place that you are now in coaching and leadership development.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very interesting journey. I guess we all have, interesting journeys in our story. And my journey actually began when I was 7 years old, when mom and dad divorced. And that had a major impact on me and my younger brother. So from, having private school education and a place to call home, everything they shifted, literally bang, everything they shifted. And I had to basically fend for myself and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so, looking after him, taking him to school, finding things to eat after school. So it was a pretty, rough kind of childhood, I guess, and early teens until I hit my young adulthood. And it was there that I started discovering, some of the discovering, not, I was going to say some of the things I teach and model now, but I discovered who I am. Fundamentally, I started searching, why do, bad things happen to good people? Why did mom and dad have a divorce? Why did I have to, carry the burden of looking after my young brother when I was just a kid? And so my search, led me to faith primarily. And that was an amazing help. And from there onwards, being connected with some wonderful leaders, I mean, top in their industry, learning from them, being mentored by them and practicing it, falling down, getting up again, bleeding, cleaning the blood off, getting up and trying new things. And yeah, so in short, that's how I got to where I am.
That's awesome. So you were, before going into coaching, you were a pastor of a church in Townsville. And prior to that, you had been in Sri Lanka for many years, pastoring and also leading at a national level.
Yes.
Tell us about that journey. What were some of the lessons you learned in leading it in a church context that you think have set you up for your conversation today?
That's a great question. And that's the question many people that are not of faith often ask me. And one of the key things I learned in that space, in that context, is how to lead volunteers. And like, for example, say if our viewers, if you're in the corporate world and you're a boss, and your leverage over the person that you employ is his wage or her wage. But as a leader in basically a volunteer organization, I had to dig deep into my personhood. Who am I? Can they connect to the authentic Cami? because that's what actually attracts people to the vision of a leader, and if they can see who you are. And I was able to, over the years, as I began to work with professionals, so not just from a faith context, but professionals from a wide variety of industry, from military to government to the corporate world. I was able to take this into their space and be able to help them perhaps tweak a little bit, and yeah.
Okay, so tell me more about the leading volunteers and leading from a place of relationship rather than, say, a leverage against a wage or authority position. What's the major difference in leading from that space?
That's a fantastic question, Taron. Great question. And if I could, can I take you to Abraham Lincoln?
Sure.
Abraham Lincoln is one of my favorite leaders, and one of the first leadership books I read was his biography. And there's a story there that says that during the war, the peak of the war, the North and the South, stuff was happening, and he called his generals and said, I want to visit you in the front. I want to come right there. I want to leave, my relative security here, and I want to be there with the troops. And so what the generals did, because he was the president of the country, they set up a safe space for him in this tent. And he walks in there, and all the generals are there, the maps and, everything is there, the models. And he said, I'm not looking for this. I want to be in the front. I want to be with the troops. I want to be with the soldiers. I want to see what they actually experience. I want to get into that hospital. I want to smell. I want to touch. I want to feel. I want to be there where, the boys are. And I went, wow. So what he was actually saying is, I want to connect with the heart of the people that I lead. And that's what people are looking for. Not just, back then with Abraham Lincoln, but right throughout, even today, especially today, Taron. Like, and look, if you're viewing this and you're a leader in the corporate space or in government, wherever, people are looking for real leaders, and people are not actually interested in what we know. They're interested in who we really are. And people buy into that. I just look at the world we live in, 2020,
Sure.
right? This space and what followers are buying into is the authenticity of those that are leading them. Because there's nothing else. We can press several buttons and nothing works right now because we're in uncharted territory. And so relationship, I would say relationship with the troops, relationship with your team, with your employees is key to success.
So, okay, so I can see why that would work in a volunteer capacity, because really you've got no leverage on a volunteer except relationship. They have to trust you. They have to be convinced that where you're going is the right direction. But what about for the leader who perhaps finds themselves in a situation where they have a lot more leverage than just relationship? Relationship leadership is a bit of a buzz thing amongst leadership. But for me as the leader, what's the payoff if I'm just trying to get outcomes? If I'm trying to hit numbers and I'm trying to get outcomes on projects, why would I opt for spending time building relationship when I can just say to somebody, get the job done or you lose your job?
Yeah, again, brilliant question. And in some of the spaces, the contexts I've been and done training in, I've asked questions both of the leader or a director, and say, for example, their sales guy, sales manager, or a person on the sales team. And about 7 out of 10 times, what they say is the reason why we meet our targets is because we believe in our leader. Right. We believe in the person that's leading us. And so that is the fundamental, that's the foundation. Yeah. It's not that, so if I'm the sales manager and you're my director and you're saying, hey, mate, I want you to drive the sales up. And yes, I can do that more effectively if I have connection. if I had this relationship, if I had this buy-in to me as Cami, the person, not as my team leader.
Yeah. It reminds me, while you were talking, it reminds me of when I was younger and I worked in a call center, and I developed a very good relationship with my call center manager. And in this particular environment, my call center manager had a falling out with the owner of the company. And so he moved on. And I remember going from being the top salesperson to not selling anything at all within the space of a couple of days. And the owner came to me and he said, "What's going on? What do I have to do to get you selling?" And my response was, "Bring Paul back." And so
Wow.
you know, what you described there is it wasn't about my capacity. It wasn't about what I was being paid. I was in that space because of my relationship with the call center manager. And once that relationship was lost, my productivity went out the window. And in fact, I actually left the company and went and joined Paul in his new company. But it's a great illustration. I think that when you value the relationship, that's where you get the ultimate productivity out of your people. It's not so much about using fear. You might get some of the way with fear, or you might get some of the way with the leverage of pay. But ultimately, relationship is what motivates most people to go above and beyond of what they've been asked to do.
Yeah.
That's great. So in the context of leadership, now you do a lot of, I'm going to just pivot away from the relational aspect a bit, because when we were preparing for this chat, we talked about having a conversation about resilience, because I think this is a really interesting topic, because not a lot of people talk about resilience in the context of leadership. Yet I think it's probably one of the things that I'm noticing more and more amongst younger employees, that their ability to withstand hardship or difficulty or challenging obstacles is increasingly diminished. And so why don't you talk to me about, first of all, what is resilience in the context that you're talking about it? Why is resilience something that we need to have an awareness of as leaders and be able to help our people with?
Yeah. So I learned resilience. I'll just give you a couple of examples, and I'll give you a definition. I learned resilience leading in the midst of a 30-year civil war that was in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And then, various other things that came, against us, and a whole series of things. And in that context, I discovered a truth about resilience, which I believe can create a great definition of what resilient. What I'm trying to say is, it's not the conventional definition I want to give you. It's something different. And so I wrote this down here. Resilience is the capacity to face stressors. So whatever stressors that you are experiencing in any given context, resilience is the capacity to face stressors without significant negative disruption to your functioning.
Right. So tell us about that context. I mean, you said that you learned this in the middle of a civil war, 30-year civil war in Sri Lanka. What are some of the challenges, apart from what we could imagine, that you and your leaders faced on a daily basis that you had to learn to overcome?
Yeah. So one of the things is uncertainty. I mean, complete and total uncertainty. There would be curfews that were declared, you'd have what they call coordinated search operations, which was good. I mean, you needed that, to keep everything under control and deal with the apparent threat. But it just disrupted life as a whole, the ebb and flow of life, from school to work, to particularly mental and emotional stresses, which, by the way, is a little secret here. So whenever you face the stresses, right? Whenever you face a stressful situation, one of the first things that is activated is your emotion and your thinking. So your emotions and our thinking or our mindsets. And so when you lose control of the ability to regulate your emotion and to be in control of your thoughts, you lose functionality.
Yeah.
And also you translate that into any given situation, from the corporate space to your personal life, to your professional life, wherever it is. And so here's your stressor, and the impact that stressor has fundamentally, primarily, as the first line of defense is your thinking and your emotion. And so if you don't understand how to regulate that emotion, what you feel, and if you don't have the ability to control your thinking, what's going to happen is you're going to lose functionality. And so it's in that context, and this is an incredible thing, Tyrone, a powerful thing. I think all our viewers, let's look at the global pandemic, all right? This is an incredible context that we have to look at how are we doing emotionally? How are we responding to the stresses that we have? What am I thinking? What is my mindset right now about what's going on? And use the current context to build resilience by learning how to regulate your emotions and learning how to take charge of your thoughts, which are two key things to building resilience.
Okay, let's unpack those two things. I'd like to unpack them separately, if that's okay with you.
Brilliant.
One of the things that I teach in my behavior courses is around how the emotions impact your fight, flight, and freeze responses. When you're under stress or you feel in danger, your flight, fright, freeze response kicks in. And one of the things your emotions do is they cut off communication to your prefrontal cortex or your logical centers of your brain. So what you're describing there, you lose the ability to function and think clearly because you're working out of that emotional fight, flight, or freeze. So what comes first? It's a little bit like the chicken and the egg. What comes first in this regard? Do we have to learn how to manage our thinking first? Or is it learning how to manage our emotions first? And, how do we do this? So let's just start with one and give us some strategies on how we can manage both our thinking and our emotions.
All right. So let me give you some explanation by giving you three things that will help you actually build resilience. Three things. So the first one is, like I said, emotional regulation, taking charge of your thoughts, and adaptation.
Great.
So let's look at what the question that you asked about, is it emotions first or thinking? I think it's both. At times it could be one or the other, because your thinking can, trigger a feeling. For example, you may be listening to a song and it, so you're listening. It has to do with your cognition, and then bang, it triggers a feeling, right? And at times it can be the other way around. You can be in a very stressful situation. You can feel the emotion of fear, and then bang, that triggers, fearful thoughts. So let's look at the emotional aspect of it first. I think, and look, I mean, our viewers don't have to go deep into this, but the basic understanding of emotions. And that is, first of all, emotions are not good or bad. It's what we make out of it.
Okay.
So for example, the emotion of fear can be used in a very positive way. I mean, a very simple thing. I should tell my son, he should love to go stick his fingers in plug points, in the electric plug points. And I said, look, don't do that, because if you do that, you will get hurt. And so, of course, like all kids, he goes and sticks his finger in and goes, wow, and so, but that experience taught him something. And so if you are experiencing, for example, fear or anxiety, or if you're experiencing the emotion of anger, you're angry that, stuff is not happening, or you're frustrated, just take a deep breath.
Okay.
For a start, it starts with taking a deep breath. So if I move a bit deeper, it's this whole thing about being aware. self-awareness, the whole thing about emotional intelligence. And so being aware, instead of reacting when you feel angry or when you feel sad, just pause for a moment and ask yourself the question, why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling this? And that simple but yet so powerful question will help you start regulating your emotion, managing it, and finding ways, so you're engaging your thinking now cognitively, finding ways on how to positively respond to that emotion.
Okay, let me push you a little bit on that. I know what you're saying. To start to manage your emotions, something as simple as taking a breath can be very powerful. But, you've been in war zones. You've been in situations where bombs are going off, there's gunfire. The level of stress that people are, I've never been in a war zone. I've grown up in Australia or in countries that are not, don't have that kind of experience. So I can only imagine based on movies and documentaries what it must be like. But to actually be in that situation where you're not even sure if you'll live to see the night through, how do you bring your emotions under control when that level of fear is just through the roof and the level of uncertainty seems beyond your control? It's got to be more than just taking a breath.
Yes, and let me try and be as vulnerable as I possibly can in this. Sure. So it's a matter of training your emotions and your mind before you experience conflict, before you experience a challenge. Now, some of our viewers may say, well, I didn't have a chance to prepare. I am already in one. But Tarun, I'll tell you what, it's a great place to be. Okay. Because you see, your current circumstances are just opportunities for you to now start learning on how to manage. Very practically, how do I manage this fear? And so the breathing is very important. It's been taught, from special forces to like yoga classes to just mom managing stress with the little bub. See, breathing is so powerful. It's been found out that we as human beings, we don't make the maximum use of the oxygen we have in the air because of shallow breathing. Right. And so you can actually train yourself with a simple exercise. And would you mind me sharing?
Please go ahead. Let's be practical.
Because it will help you manage your emotion as well as get your mind into a space where you can think. Great. Just simple thing of just pausing for a moment. So let's take fear or anger, one of those emotions, right? And without engaging, without just like responding like you usually did to fear and anger, pause for a moment and take a breath. Just count 5. Simple, slowly count 5, hold for 5, let go for 5, right? So 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5. Inhale, hold for 5, exhale, hold for 5 and exhale. And so just that little simple exercise disrupts your learned behavior. Okay. Your response to an emotion. All right. It disrupts it. And then in that time, you're asking yourself the question, why am I feeling this way? Okay. And how can I respond? So can you see what I'm saying? You're not responding to the emotion. You're engaging cognitively. You're engaging your thought process. Yeah. To effectively find a way to manage this. And so from whether you're in a war zone, whether you're a CEO of a company, whether you're a mom or a dad at home looking after young kids, it's not as hard, Torin. It's not as hard as people think. The thing I found out is, are we willing to try something different? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's the ability to really catch yourself in the act and pull yourself back from that edge of over reacting or reacting without control. That is really the key there. So tell me, I've used the technique you described in many situations where I've found myself either very stressed out or very fearful of situation. One situation I remember is I have had this recurring dream where I get trapped in a tunnel and I die trapped underground. And I visited Israel a number of years ago, and one of the places you can visit in Jerusalem is Hezekiah's tunnel. And it's like, you've got to go and do it. You know, this is a ancient historical artifact, but I was petrified about going underground into this tunnel that was, you know, I couldn't stand up in. And so I had to use my breathing to keep myself calm but the whole time I was in there, inside, I still felt panicked. My heart was beating fast. I still felt, but on the outside, I was calm. It's like that example of the duck on the water. The legs are swimming furiously, but on the top of the water, they're serene. Is that controlled? Is it okay to still feel fearful inside and manage yourself outside? Or should I be feeling something different on the inside?
Wow. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. See what many people try to do. So let's look at fear. Like let's take your example.
Yeah.
So what they try to do is they try to deny that they are fearful.
Right.
I think it comes more so with men.
Yeah.
We try to be in control of everything, and we try to, you know, put on this superhuman, this Superman kind of persona. And by doing that, we're doing ourselves more harm than good. And so, yes, you will feel fear because that's an emotion. You can never deny it. You can never suppress it. I mean, you can if you want to, but that's not going to help. So here's the thing, right? You're in a situation. You're getting in that tunnel. You did your breathing. In other words, you cognitively you engaged a thinking process. You engaged a thought. I will do my breathing. You engage it, right? So you didn't let the fear overcome your thinking, your mind.
Yeah.
But you use your mind. You use your mind to do what you did.
Yeah.
So it's not that any of those techniques get rid of fear. I mean, some of the techniques they use to train in special forces are incredible, scientifically based, scientifically evidenced. But it's not that they do not feel fear. They know how to control it, how to manage it, and not be inhibited by it, not be restricted by it.
Yeah.
You see, so trying to get rid of fear completely and totally from your life, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's trying to
really it's like that old adage where they say courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the ability to move forward despite your fear.
Absolutely.
It's that and really this applies to all emotions: anger, fear, worry. It's not that you necessarily have to have the absence of the emotion. You can acknowledge the emotion. I feel angry in this moment, but I'm going to choose to manage my anger and not let it come out all over the people I lead or my family, or whatever it might be. Yeah, that's great. That's really good. So we've talked about emotion, and once we sort of calm ourselves and we use techniques to really bring our emotions under control, what are some of the thinking techniques that we can use to then continue to manage the situation positively and to move forward productively in those times when we feel under threat or uncertain?
Great question. You see, let me put it this way: we are in charge of our thinking, not the situation, not that individual. You see, I am in charge of my thinking, and once you got your emotion, you know, under control, you're managing it. You have to take control of self-talk. You see, because self-talk is one of the biggest underminers
Mm.
of your ability, your ability to be resilient.
Mm.
You see, I mean, look at a child, right? And I've not researched this, but I've read sufficient to perhaps put this idea, this thought across.
Mm.
I think we are all born with a level of resilience.
Mm.
You follow what I'm saying? We all are. I mean, look at a child learning to walk. You know, they fall and they may cry. They feel the pain. The cry is an expression of that emotion, the pain, what they feel. They're not denying it, but they get up and they try to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so we all have that. We all have that capacity. I believe untapped, unrealized, ununderstood capacity to be resilient. And so once we take charge of our thinking, so I call it above the line thinking.
Mm.
You know, don't play the victim, don't play the defeated,
Mm.
but start above the line thinking. So, for example, I am in charge of my thought process, not him, not them, not someone else. Because the minute you lose charge of your thinking, you're going to lose charge of everything else.
Yeah.
So again, just like the breathing, a simple thing, a very simple thing, just say to yourself, I am in charge of my thinking.
Great.
Here's an example. This may be a bit extreme to our viewers, or some of you may have, be more extreme to this. So I have daily rituals in place, and one of those rituals help to remind me that I am resilient. I'm resilient right now, and I will be resilient tomorrow. And between now and tomorrow, or not literally tomorrow, but I will learn new ways to be resilient. So one of the things I do is with my workout, I do knuckle push-ups or press-ups, and you could feel the pain. And I don't do it on a carpet. I've got a wooden, raw, rough deck at the back, right? I know, I said extreme. But look, what I'm trying to say is find something that you can do, a little ritual, a little exercise to help build this. So with the thought, the emotion, and resilience. So I'm there, and yeah, I can feel the pain. I can feel it. So I can't deny the fact that I'm feeling the pain. So here's what I say to myself, Cami, you are feeling the pain. It hurts, doesn't it? I go, yes. But now if I stop there and give in to it, Cami, you're feeling the pain. It hurts, doesn't it? What's going to happen is I'll go down. I'll never be able to push myself up.
Right.
So what I do is with my thought, I go, yes, I feel the pain, but I'm resilient and I push myself up.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying? So little techniques, little things where you use adversity. So in that context, I'm creating an adversity.
Yeah. Right.
Help me physically feel it.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
You're callousing your thinking against. I think that's what David Goggins says. He says you've got to callous your mind against pain or unhelpful thinking.
Exactly. And so little exercises like that,
Great.
Just the whole thing about above the line. So the minute you think, you start seeing your or feeling or knowing that your thinking is going down south, replace it. If like I'm not worth it, to I am worth it. I don't think I can do this. Yes, I can. Let me reach out to someone that can help me. I've tried this so many times. Well, let me find another way of doing something I've done before in a new way. So you have to, it's an intentional, conscious, mindful awareness that you need to have.
Yeah. How long have you been training yourself to think this way? I know for me, when I was a teenager, my dad was right into Paul J. Meyer, who was a positive thinking and personal motivation coach, and so he used to get me to listen to cassettes on positive thinking. And so even though as a teenager I wasn't really into it, I got the concept of it fairly early, and I think that really had an impact on me. But for people who have never grown up with that kind of, I guess, input or opportunity to think like that, how long does it take to develop that kind of resilience in your thinking?
So it doesn't take too long for you to start with that first step.
Mm.
The key is this in the whole thing about starting, right? I was just thinking of something I said to someone yesterday. Uh, the difference between whether you will change and experience transformation is just one thing, and that is your action or your inaction.
Okay.
And so, with the whole thing of how long does it take to build resilience?
Yeah.
Well, the longer you sit and do nothing about it, the longer it's going to take.
Yeah, right.
But even after this viewing this podcast, if you, I mean, take just one of the examples that we have shared, or something that you have gone, wow, I can do that, and just start that action, you're one step closer to being more resilient than you are right now.
Great.
And you're right. So one of the things I've done for so many years, I would say for almost, over 35 years, uh, is I read a lot of books, that feed resilience. I hang around with people that are resilient. So reading and hanging around with people. Now, why do we do that? Because with reading, obviously, you're engaging your mind there again. You see, so that's cognition. You're reading, and one of the things I do with reading, I ask myself the question. I go like, so hang on, why did he do it that way? So it's not just reading a story or just speed reading it, but asking questions so that I can learn, and then hanging around with people that are resilient, so that I can model. So modeling is a very powerful thing.
Great.
You see, so I look at you and I go, hey, there's something in Tarun that I want in my life, so I'm going to hang out with the guy. I'm going to ask him questions. I'm going to observe him. I'm going to ask him, mate, how would you respond to a similar situation that I'm in right now? And I will model you. And the great thing is this, like, in today's context, 21st century, we do not have to reinvent the wheel, because there are people who are resilient that have gone before us. Like you said, Myers, they've written books. One of the guys I really love reading is Ant Middleton.
Okay.
So Ant Middleton is ex-British SAS. And some of his thinking and some of the experience that he brings, into the black and white, into literature, is absolutely brilliant.
Okay.
Our own boy, Mark Donaldson, he's written a brilliant book called Crossroads, and you could pick up the theme of resilience. So, for example, he didn't join the Australian Special Forces and then become resilient. See, there was this whole thing that I said earlier, that we all have a level of resilience. He had it, and he used it even though he didn't understand it in his childhood. You see, so going back to, that answering your question, action or your inaction will determine how long or how quickly you will develop the capacity of being resilient.
It's great. It's such good advice. And one of the things I mean, I don't know if you've observed this as well, but one of the things I think we have really done a disservice to people who struggle with, say, depression or mental illness in today's culture is we have really promoted the idea of victimhood or your status as a victim, because of where you've come from or because of the lot that you were dealt in life. You should be really disappointed with your life. You should be angry. And we've taught young people in many regards, I think, to become resentful of their lives rather than resilient. And two of the things that I found in my own life when I went through the journey of overcoming depression was I had to manage my inputs, what I was listening to, what I was reading, what I was watching. And the other thing was I had to choose who I was hanging out with. I had to find people, like you say, who were going to build me up, who were actually ahead of me in my journey, who were going to model for me what healthy thinking looked like. And sadly, I think we haven't really given that message to the younger generation very well, or there seems to be this cultural emphasis on victimhood rather than resilience. Do you want to make a comment on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, mate, thank you. I mean, that's great, because I mean, as you would know, because you work a lot with this generation,
Yeah.
and particularly here in Australia. And I'm saying Australia because this is where where we live in.
Yeah.
And youth depression, like I'm talking about this year, has not just doubled, it has exponentially grown.
Yeah.
And you're right, we have either consciously or unconsciously from every sector built this culture, this mentality of if I am having these issues in my life, I'm depressed, therefore I'm a victim.
Mm.
And so I mean, even from media, from I mean everything, I mean even churches. So I don't think any institution, or for want of a better word, any organization is immune from this.
Yeah.
So I feel, let me rephrase it, I think I know that if we can give young people the message of resilience, all right, so you are experiencing this situation, here's how you can manage your emotions.
Yeah.
All right, here's how you can change your thinking. And so this whole thing about transformation, teaching them how to tap into their resourcefulness.
Yeah.
Very often we say, well, they're helpless. They're not. We make them helpless by making them victims.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, because each of us, we are resourceful, and if we could only be directed in, where do we find our resourcefulness?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in here.
Right. That's so good. So do you think, I mean, you've worked a lot with people who have suffered trauma and, I'm guessing PTSD and, being in a war zone. You've done training with military institutions. What have you seen for people that have overcome the experiences that can so profoundly change you mentally and emotionally? What have you seen the keys for those people that have overcome it have been? I mean, we've talked about emotions and thinking, but are there any other aspects about the attitude or the approach that people bring to that where they have overcome it versus somebody who hasn't overcome it?
I would say, in my experience, that the two key things are what we discussed: emotions and mentality. So I call it emotional and mental fitness. You see, so let's go to what you said. Use a very important word: attitude. You see, so attitudes are created and are triggered by emotions and the way we think.
Right.
You see, so if you don't have, for want of a better phrase, a handle or an understanding on our emotions and be able to regulate it, and being able to regulate our thinking, then we're not going to have a good attitude.
Yeah.
I have a great friend of mine. He's ex Aussie Army. I mean, he's a brother. He's a brilliant man. He's been through so much, and I read his Facebook posts, and I go, "Wow!" Every day, there's nothing negative that comes out of that man.
Great. Great.
And so I'm looking at him, and there are so many others that have been through adverse situations, that have been able to understand the emotions, been able to over a period of time, manage it, regulate, respond appropriately, and then create a new mindset.
Great.
So there's also something else, if you don't mind me mentioning.
Please.
You say in that space. So, for example, if one of our viewers, if you're feeling depressed, I acknowledge that you are in a in a real place. You can't deny that.
No.
But you should not buy into the victim mentality,
Mm.
because one of the things I've had to first address or fight is this
Mm.
victim mentality. So before you're able to help them understand emotions and thinking, they play the victim.
Mm.
It's like, oh, but you don't understand what I've been through.
Yeah.
And so in my case, I go, well, maybe not the exact same scenario, but I've been
Yeah.
through some stuff
Yeah.
that I can't even talk about
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of conflict and so on and so forth.
Mm.
And so, when we try to use our pain to play the victim, we're doing
Mm.
ourselves the greatest disservice.
Yeah.
You know.
So true. Talk more about that. Like, I had this realization a few years ago when I was probably just feeling sorry for myself and feeling overwhelmed by stress, and I had a typical reaction for me. I started to feel frustrated. I started to feel overwhelmed, and I sat down on my bed and I started down the path of feeling sorry for myself. But then there was this thought that occurred to me: why are you so surprised that bad stuff happens? Bad stuff happens to everybody. So quit moaning about it and just accept that it happens and find out a way to move through it. And it was a real turning point for me in my thinking, because what I realized was I had spent a lot of my younger years playing the victim card, because for some reason, I believed that my life was harder than other people's, or I had been dealt a raw deal that other people didn't know what I had been through. And then it was like a light bulb went on and I said, hang on a second, life's crap for everybody. Everybody has
Yeah.
bad days. Everybody has stuff that happens. Stop expecting it to be different for you, and then you won't be so disappointed when it happens. Is that what you're talking about when you say don't buy into this victim narrative and allow that to sort of control the way you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, you know, as human beings, right?
Mm.
Wherever we were born, wherever we live right now, whatever the form of government is, whatever the economy is, we all have a level playing field.
Yeah,
It's just relative to where we are.
yeah,
You see, it's relative. So some of the struggles that someone in a distant, war-torn country is going
yeah,
through,
yeah,
we may not go through that, but there's stuff happening right here.
yeah,
And so we're not better off than them. Someone else, is not better off than us.
yeah,
We are, as human beings on this planet, we have a level playing field. But then
yeah,
someone may ask, Tarun, viewers may ask, what's the difference
yeah,
if we all have the level playing field? Two words: time and opportunity.
yeah,
Time and opportunity. You see, what about time? See, time basically waits for no one,
yeah,
right? In the business world, they say time is money,
mm,
but I think it's beyond that. It's
mm,
beyond that. When you look at the reality of our humanity,
mm,
our humanness in context of 7 billion people,
mm,
time is not money. Time is life.
yeah,
You see, and the more, again, for the want of a better phrase, the more we waste time, the more we're losing the opportunities that,
good,
for example,
yeah,
adversity presents us to
yeah,
become better people,
yeah,
a better me.
yeah,
You see, and so I can play the victim card and mate, look, I tried that. I tried. I think we all do.
yeah, sure,
And I appreciate I appreciate the fact that you're so vulnerable, and that's what I love about you. Maybe I can sit with you and just like
mm,
and so I tried playing the card, and listen, I felt really good about it.
mm,
And that's the thing, people don't realize, or maybe they do, and they love it too much to give up. You play the victim card, and it does something to you until one day you come and go, hey, no one really cares, really.
yeah, yeah,
And so what that happens is that shifts, that actually compounds.
yeah,
the internal conflict.
Yeah.
And then it drags you deeper into that hole, and it's harder to get out. And so with the whole thing, we got a level playing field, time and opportunity. Use the time you have literally
Yeah.
right now to maximize, to use the opportunity that adversity has presented you to become a better you, to grow, to learn resilience, you know?
Okay, well, let me play the devil's advocate for a minute, because a lot of people would say that, no, we don't all get a level playing field. You know, there are certain sectors of our society that have more privilege than others, you know, depending on the genetics of your family heritage, depending on the color of your skin, depending on the school you went to, depending on the country you were born in, that some people are born with privilege, which is a popular word, that gives them an unfair advantage over other people. Now, I have my thoughts on this, but before I share my thoughts, I really want you to speak to that, because you're saying we have a level playing field. What does that mean for somebody who perhaps has the perception that it isn't a level playing field, that they were dealt a bad hand and they're starting further behind than anybody else?
All right, so let me go back to, to Sri Lanka.
Mm.
So most of our viewers would have heard about the 30-year-old war and, the economy, run down and so on and so forth. You see, let me say this first. I count it a privilege to call Australia my home now.
Mm.
But we moved here about 10 years ago.
Mm.
We were here in the 80s, went back to a war-torn country and served, and did what we did in terms of leading and all that there. I never once thought to myself, hey, I wish I could live in Australia. I wished I could live someplace else. I didn't. You know why? Because I knew enough about Australia. I knew enough about the droughts. I knew enough about our farmers. I knew enough about, ordinary mums and dads. I knew enough about, Australia to realize, hey, they have their own challenges. So there's nothing fair or unfair about life. It's let me rephrase. There's nothing fair or unfair about life. It's your perception.
Yeah. Okay.
And it all has to do with perception. Here's something else. I mean, I'm sure you have, and lots of our viewers have. I've sat and had, meals with leaders of countries, nations. So they have power, right? They have wealth. At literally a snap of their fingers, they can get stuff done. And do you think they had inner peace? Do you think they had joy? Do you think they had what we're all looking for, meaning in life? Absolutely not.
No.
And so we could look at them and say, look, it's easier for them because they have X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But it's not. So once you enter into their world and you begin to see some of that stuff, you go, wow. Time and opportunity. That's what we all have been given. Yeah. And so even if you feel, just for the sake of discussion, even if our viewers, someone there is feeling, well, I have been dealt a raw deal. Well, I can empathize with you just with that feeling. You can't deny that feeling, but don't live in that feeling, because that's one of the greatest lies life can sell you.
Yeah.
Because remember, time waits for no one. The more you buy into, the more you subscribe to that perception that he or she or them or that group of people have been dealt a better hand than you, the longer it will take you to get out of your misery.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you got to just get up and go, hey, I am not letting, this stuff continue in my life any longer. Great. I'm going to do something about it.
Great. So good. So good. I love it. And I agree with you. I've spent a lot of time in third world nations, and I've sat with people who live in slums, who whole families live in a room the size of my children's bedroom. Yeah. And yet they seem to be happier and more accomplished in life than many people I meet with much wealth and much opportunity in the Western world. And you're right, it's what you do with what you've got. It's not about where you start, but are you going to get off your butt and do something and take the opportunities that are given to you? Cami, I need to be aware of time, because if I'm not careful, I'll just keep talking to you all night. I'm thoroughly enjoying our conversation, and I suspect we'll need to have a second conversation and continue it. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your heart on this topic. Very quickly, if people want to get in touch with you, perhaps they're looking for coaching or looking for somebody to work with them in developing resilience, how can they get in touch with you? What's the process with your coaching programs?
All right, so they could get on, contact me on Facebook. It's Camillus D. Almeida. That's Camillus Dealmeida on Facebook. Or if you just type in Cami D. Almeida, you get me on Facebook. Or you can contact me on 0414-313-920, or contact my good friend and brother Tarun, and he'll connect you with me.
And I will put those links in the description just to make it a little easier for everyone to get in touch with you. And I highly recommend, if you're looking for a coach or you're looking for somebody to help you journey through your leadership or personal development, and Cami is an incredible leader and an incredible friend to me, and I highly recommend what he does to you. Cami, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with our listeners, and looking forward to doing it again soon. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you got a ton of value out of that episode. Don't forget to let us know what you thought in the comments, and if you have a topic you'd like us to cover next time, we'd love to hear from you. If you know anyone that would benefit from the content that we produce, please like and share this channel, and we look forward to having you next time on the Tarun Stevenson Leadership Channel.